I have been working through the book of Job from the Hebrew text, looking at reading slowly, reading the Hebrew, and then looking at the grammar, and then finally a commentary on each of the verses. We at this point are in chapter 38, beginning at verse 30, 31. It's interesting. This is a very interesting chapter. And God is asking Job, where were you, Job, when I laid the foundation of the earth? Uh, and then he says, can you really understand about creation? Can you control the waters, the primeval waters? And have you gone to the depths of the sea and earth and understand it? Can you understand, Job, the treasuries of snow and hail? Uh, and he's just asking all these questions. And of course, Job, it's irony, Job has no answer. And what it's really saying is, Job, if you can't understand these physical things, then how can you understand the problem of why the righteous suffer? This seems to be the theme of the author of Job. I am now at verse 31, and we just finished looking at the rain having a father and trying to understand uh, how the ice comes and how the hoarfrost comes. Who genders it? Job, can you understand that? And what causes waters to freeze? And we've looked at the Hebrew and tried to do the grammar up to this point. So we now are in verse 31. And I want to just give a little vocabulary uh, as we get into this section. So we have, first of all, the verb kashar, meaning to bind or to bind fast, to bind. Then we have ma'adanot, which means bounds or bands. Kima means Pleiades, Kima. And then Moshechet means a cord. Kasil means Orion or a fool. And Mazarot, we're not exactly sure what that word means. It is doubtful that we really understand it. However, it's clearly looking at either a star or a constellation of stars. And then Aish is the great bear, many feel, in the constellation of stars. And Nacha means to lead, and Mishtar means authority or rulership. So at this point, I would like to go to the Hebrew, read it, and talk about it. And so in these verses, he's looking at the constellations and he's asking Job, Job, can you understand the constellations and how they're put together? So I'll pick it up at uh, verse 31. Ha tekasher ma'adanot kima o mushechot kasil tefatecha. That is, can you bind the chains of kima? And this could be rendered in translation Pleiades, or Moshechot, or the bands of Kasil, of Orion. Can you loose Tefatecha from Patach? And as we look at this, at the grammar, just a moment, First of all, we have ha-te-kasher, from the root kashar, to bind. Notice here we have a PL, imperfect, second masculine singular, from kashar. So can you bind ma'adanot, feminine plural, the chains of kima? Kima means Pleiades, and or moshechot. Here we have another feminine plural, the bands of Casil. Casil means, like we said, a fool, and it's looking at a cluster of stars. And we'll look at both of these in just a moment in terms of the commentary. Can you loose the bands of Casil? Tefatecha. Tefatecha is from patach, to open. Here we have a PL, imperfect. Notice the shava pathak doubling of the middle radical in the tet, indicative of a PL stem. A PL imperfect, uh, second masculine singular, from patach. So can you loose the bands of Casil? Just a word about these names, Kima or Pleiades. It is interesting I was looking up in the New Illustrated Bible Dictionary, edited by Ronald F. Youngblood and consulting editors F. Bruce and R.K. Harrison. This is on page, basically, it's under the name Pleiades. So it's under the P in this dictionary. And they write as follows: a brilliant cluster of stars seen in the shoulder of Taurus, the bull. The name Pleiades comes from the 7 daughters of Atlas and Pleione in Greek mythology. This constellation consists of several hundred stars. Interesting. Although the naked eye can usually see only 6 or 7. So Job declared that God made the Pleiades and bound them in a cluster. So can you understand that, Job? Are you able to do that? Is the thought that Job is being asked here by God. It's interesting. I was looking at the next word, kasil, which means, and the two go together, which reads, kasil, which means Orion. And let me just read a note here in the Jewish Sonsino commentary series, and this is on Job. It's on page 201. Again, the author, Rabbi Reichert, and he is quoting Kraling, which is another author, another commentary writer. And I thought it was interesting what he says in this quote as he quotes him. Kraling was a Christian Hebrewist, and the book, his book is entitled The Book of the Ways of God, E.G. Kraling. So he quotes Kraling on page 201 as follows: the Pleiades are attractively compared to a chain of jewelry that God has wrought, and Orion is regarded as a Titan who absurdly rebelled against God in primeval times and was forever bound to the sky by means of 3 stars known as the girdle. This is Kraling. This is on page 201 of Job in the Sonsino commentary series. And then he goes on to quote another author, Peake, and tell us a little bit about Orion, which is somewhat interesting. Peake also was a Christian Hebrewist, A.S. Peake, who wrote the commentary on Job in the Century Bible. And quoting Peake, Peake writes, perhaps the thought is that in spite of Orion's turbulent character, the Almighty relaxes his bands because, however dangerous he may be, God can, when he will, contemptuously leave him at large. Job, if he could, would not dare to do this. Sort of an interesting thought. And as I've thought about this, however you interpret the thought, it does seem to mean that God gave a series of stars that you could see that look like chains that are bound together in describing Pleiades or Chema. And then Orion, as we said, could well look at the revolt. We're looking at it through mythology, the revolt of one of the Titans against the Almighty. And because there's just a few stars around him that may be like a girdle. And I think the thought of Peake is very interesting that basically he relaxes his bands in that he did not have more stars and bands around him. Sort of interesting. And I think the thought is, can you understand that, Job? Do you have that kind of power? And again, he continues to question Job about his inability to figure out, if he can't figure out these things, how can he figure out why, the why of suffering? So then we move on to 32. It's just sort of interesting, and I'm enjoying this challenge to me. The constellations of the heavens are what he's talking about, and he discusses these clusters of stars or constellation, which basically Job could not control or guide. Only God could do that. That seems to be the thought all the way through here. Then in the next phrase, verse 32, it reads, Hatotzi mazarot be'ito. Can you lead or bring forth the mazarot in its season? Va'ayish al banecha tanchem. Can you guide the bear with its sons, or the bear, emphatic here, with his sons? Can you guide? Notice here we have everything beginning with a question, and we're looking at irony here. Of course, Job can't do this. And notice Tatsi or Ha-Totsi is from Yatsa, to bring forth or to lead forth or to cause to bring forth. Here we have, following the hey, asking the question, we have then the Hifil imperfect, second masculine singular from Yatsa. Historically, this was a pei vav verb, and touts tsi became totsi, where the pathak vav assimilated and came together, forming a long holum. So are you, and this is the Hifil again, are you able, Hifil imperfect, second masculine singular, are you able to lead forth the mazarot in its season? Now, we're not sure what the mazarot is. it's really, um, we just don't know. From what I've studied through the commentaries and looking at the dictionaries, it's certainly a cluster of stars. Uh, the Sonsino Bible series on Job suggests this. While the derivation of Mazarot are unknown, it is clear that the context is that of a star or group of stars. And then Reichart goes on to say some authorities regard it as another form of Mazalot, rendered constellations in 2 Kings, chapter 23, verse 5, which is thought to indicate the signs of the zodiac. And we just don't know. I mean, that is one thought of the Mazarot. At least, I don't think most commentators and students are aware of what that exactly means. But then it goes on, Va'ayish al banecha tanchem, or the bear with her sons, or her sons, yes, can you guide? Notice here we have tanchem from Naham, to guide. Are you able to guide? Uh, are you able to guide them? Nacha, as I'm looking at this particular verb here in 32, are you able to guide the bear and her sons, to lead them? The root is nacha, a lamed he root, and the aim here is a pronominal suffix, third masculine plural. And what we have here is a hifil form, second masculine singular, the hifil imperfect. So the Ayish means bear with her sons. Are you able to cause them to be led, or are you able to guide them? It's interesting. Again, what is this about the bear? I've never studied a lot of astronomy, but again, I appreciate Kreiling's thought here. He is quoted by Reichart on page 202 of the Sonsino Bible commentary series. He writes as follows: the Mazarot, probably the northern constellation, the Boots, and Irish with her young. And here it looks like he goes on to talk about Aldebaran and the other 6 Hyades in the head of Tyrus are regarded as being led or sent forth by God like domestic animals. Looking at the stars again, like domestic animals in the bear. It is manifest that the wonderful order apparent in the entire celestial sphere is due to commands that have been laid down by a sovereign will. And it is equally clear that the heavens, as evidenced by the seasons, tides, etc., exercise an office of powerful control over the earth. The thought is, can Job organize the cosmos and make it to his will in this fashion? And Reichart is quoting from Keiling here on page 202 of the Sonsino commentary. So it's interesting when we look at this whole section. We're talking about the constellations that God set up in heaven. And the thought is, are you able, Job, to do these things? And I thought it was interesting to lead the bear out and her sons, looking at the constellations of the Ayish of the bear, or like the, I guess you would say, like a necklace, so to speak, around Kima, Pleiades, or like a girdle to guard Orion. I mean, very interesting, amazing, uh, can I say, in the beauty of what Job is saying here. So, can you, Job, understand all of this? Are you able to put it together? Is the thought. Of course, only God can. And that leads us then to verse 33. Hayadata chukot shamayim. Do you know, Job, the ordinances of the heaven? Or can you establish, O tasim mishtaro ba'aretz? Or can you place or establish its dominion upon the earth? Notice here, the question again, the interrogative, hey. Yadata is the cow perfect, second masculine singular from yada. Chukot is ordinance. Chok is ordinance, and here's your feminine plural in the od. Do you know the ordinances of the heavens? Or can you tasim, a place, or establish its dominion on earth? Tasim is a middle weak verb, seem, a cow, imperfect, second masculine singular from seem. Can you establish mishtarot? Mishtar means dominion or rule. Are you able to establish this rule, mishtar? And then you have your O, your pronominal suffix, third masculine singular. So are you able to place its dominion on the earth, the dominions of the heavens and the ordinances thereof? This is the question that the Lord is asking Job. And again, the writer of Job is again bringing us to understand that, like Job, if we can't understand these things, we can't explain the way things happen in life. It's beyond us and so forth, especially uh, why the righteous, like Job, had suffered. So, if I could just summarize verse 33, does Job know the heavenly bodies, the sun, the moon, the stars, and the laws which govern their existence and movement? Can he establish the dominion of the heavenly bodies in producing the seasons of the year, winter, summer, or fall, or the sun or moon in ruling over the day and night? Only God can do these things. So we're seeing again that the heavenly ordinances that God has established, only God can establish that. And Job really is unable. He's not able to even think about beginning to do that. So, again, this is the thought that we're seeing up to this point. So, what I'd like to do is stop here, and the next time we'll pick it up where he's going to talk in 34 about the clouds and the rain, the lightning, and so forth. So let me stop here, and next time we'll pick up at that point. Thank you.